Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the CEU Executive MBA Munich Open Day. We are here partnering with Advantage Austria Munich, our host tonight. I'm Thomas Lamel. I'm the Senior Program Manager of this evening, and I will guide you through this evening. We will start with a program presentation with an engagement with current participants and alumni, followed by the keynote presentation by Professor Mats Köster. And in the end, I will collect your questions. We will have time to respond to your questions in the Q&A sessions. At any time during this event, you can shoot in your questions in the chat box, or here at the event, you can just ask me. I will collect them at the end, and I will be happy to respond to them at the end of this session. I would like to start this presentation with the question if an MBA is still worth it. You should ask yourself this question because you don't have to go very far these days to encounter that we are witnessing fundamental transformations in the world in a century, basically. In 2008, we've seen a huge financial crisis. In 2015, we had a large refugee crisis. And right now, we are in the biggest pandemic in over a century. And these changes are part of a much broader set of transformations that is taking place. Some of them are positive, and some of them are pretty dangerous, to be honest. So the key question is, how do you as business professionals prepare for this challenging and unpredictable environment? And the second question is an MBA the way to do it? We've seen recently an explosion of online education, and I'll show you why we believe our MBA is still worth it. So if you're interested in further education, if you're interested in an MBA program, you usually start searching for an MBA in the city you live in. That's the obvious choice, to start where you live. What you tend to find is usually a plain vanilla MBA curriculum. The faculty who are delivering the program are mostly local. So is the student body. The international student body is relatively low at in these programs. Some programs in Western Europe can be quite expensive, starting at 80,000 euro of tuition or even more. But the good thing is that these programs mean there's no work interruption for you, so there's no disruption in your work life. So if you contrast that with the top business schools in the world, they often have a very differentiated, very mission-driven MBA curriculum, especially in the United States. They offer a certain expertise or a certain perspective. Because of their full-time format, their student body is international, actually, which is a good thing, of course. And you are leaving the labor market for 1 or even 2 years, which is, beside of the time commitment, it's another financial burden. And these programs are even more expensive at more than 100,000 or 120,000 euro or dollars for your budget. And you may have to move your whole family to the new MBA location. So what we do at CEU is to offer the best of 2 worlds. There is no work interruption thanks to the practical and modular format. I will talk about it later. The Executive MBA, which is called, our MBA is called the Executive MBA for the Open World, is mission-driven. I will talk about the Executive MBA for the Open World philosophy later. We have a very international student body because of the modularity of the program. Actually, according to the Times Higher Education, we are the second most international university in the world, and our student body perfectly reflects this diversity. Participants can fly in, can fly out, which is a major advantage of the program. I would like to introduce you to some of our faculty members. For example, here, if you're new to finance, Joy is a uniquely gifted educator. Generation after generation of our students tell us how she's just very unique in explaining complex financial concepts. Then we have for strategy, for example, Yusuf Akbar, who has taught in more than 40 countries and advises leading Fortune 500 companies. For economics, Mark Kaufman, an expert in applied theory with a PhD from Harvard University. For leadership, Austin, a world-class psychologist with executive education experience on 4 continents, he will lead the way. Or Sophia Barani, a PhD from LSE, an expert in the future of work, which tackles topics like automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. Or our faculty director, Professor Maciej Kieślowski, professor for regulation and market strategy with a JSD degree from Yale, an MBA from INSEAD, and an MBA from Princeton. Or the course on big data and artificial intelligence will be taught by Miklos Koren, one of the leading scholars in this field in Europe with a Harvard PhD. Also, we have, if you are already experienced in finance, you will be placed in the advanced track with Adam Zawodowski, a leading expert on complex investments with a PhD from Princeton. Professor Ceu Alumni, a PhD professor from Central Florida. Her expertise is emotional marketing. And last but not least, Professor Mike Labelle, who holds a prestigious EU Jean Monnet Chair on EU Energy Innovation Studies. And some of our visiting faculty, Professor Selos from Stanford, Professor Savary from Columbia, Professor Hernandez from Berkeley Business School, Professor Hui Chen from Zurich, or Milena Nikolova from the Behavior Smart enterprise. She's a Chief Behavior Officer. So what you see right now is the program. Here's what the program looks like. As you can see, we have 3 modules in the first year, 4 in the second year, and 3 in the third year, which gives you full flexibility and a balance in your life. As you can see, we are piggybacking around popular European holidays like May 1st or August 15th or November 1st. Actually, next weekend on November 1st, we are delivering another module on our Vienna campus. We're piggybacking around popular European holidays because it's easy for you to take time off your job, to bring your family to campus, and there's no work disruption for you. In the summers, our bespoke and cutting-edge leadership program takes place in Budapest, and you'll have the opportunity to benefit from electives from the faculty in the world we invite to teach your classes. So there will come a day when you finish with us and you will join the CEU Alumni Network from around the world, basically. As I already said, CEU is the second most international university, and you can rely on this active elite network on every continent. We have an elite network of alumni of over 18,000 professionals in basically, actually, literally every single country. We have city-level chapters, country-level chapters. Basically, wherever you are in the world, you'll find CEU alumni to interact with and to reach out to. The network is a network that you can really count on, and one of the key assets that we have. And again, thanks to being the second most international university, you are part of a really international network around the world. So the question is, how are we able to offer such a high quality program at only 29,000 euro of tuition? And you might have heard it already, but the answer lies in our founder and benefactor, George Soros, who created CEU with the mission to promote open society. Just recently, George Soros made a further contribution to CEU's mission by offering another $1 billion, billion with a B, in endowment to create the Open Society University Network, which means we are the best endowed university in Europe. So what does the executive MBA for the open world mean? What makes CEU unique? First of all, when we talk about open world, about open societies, we mean skepticism towards dogmas, towards hierarchies and privileges, both in context of how we teach, but also in composition of the cohort. Diversity is key to creating a successful program. And for us, it's not just an empty marketing catchphrase. Secondly, we believe in debate and radical rational thinking. Every idea can be challenged. We believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives and fake news, because it's narratives that create polarization these days in our societies. And we believe the best way to challenge this narrative-based discourse is to make arguments based on facts and realities, of course, which is, again, the hallmark of Karl Popper's definition of open societies. We are fundamentally opposed to all kinds of discrimination, and we actively promote diversity within our program. The way we finance the scholarship means we create opportunities for people who traditionally have not been able to actually join an executive MBA program. I will talk about the fellowships and the scholarships later if desired. And we see managers not just as people who deal with businesses or resources, but also we believe that managers go beyond that. Everybody is a positive change agent, no matter what their professional background is. And the background of our participants could be NGO, public sector. We have entrepreneurs in the program. We have corporate people in the program, but also coming from the cultural field and from human rights activism. It's a really diverse class. So what does the CEU Executive MBA classroom look like? Currently, we have around 65 managers with an average of 14 years of work experience, including a minimum of 3 years of managerial or leadership experience. As you can see from the image, from the back of the image, we use state-of-the-art classroom technology and setups in order to facilitate discussion and interaction in class. We make use of case-based learning rather than traditional lectures that you would find in local MBA programs, because we want to take you, experts in your specific field, from this level of functional expertise to the strategic level. So we offer a hybrid format because of the Corona pandemic. Every participant can choose to join online if traveling is not safe enough, or if you have problems getting a visa, or if there's any travel restrictions, you can simply opt in to join online. We have invested heavily in studio-grade microphones, captioning the lecturers and all participants, because education is not just a one-way street from the lecturer to the student or the participant. It also takes place from the participant to the lecturer and among the executive MBA fellows. We have invested in large screens and high-quality cameras. We have created physical virtual breakout rooms for support teams. Speaking of support teams, group work is very essential to the executive MBA. And in those support teams, you will not be placed in a group with people with the same background, with the same linguistic background, with the same professional background, with the same cultural background, because we want to actively expose you to diversity, because this is where the learning experience really starts, if you're exposed to new ideas, new perspectives. We have created personalized virtual backgrounds and high-quality individual support on every stage of your experience with us. Those are the virtual backgrounds that I just mentioned. As you can see, you don't only see the participants, your fellows, but you can also notice their names. You can recognize their names. And it's easier for you to caption if and when and who's speaking at that moment. And the color coding means it's an indication for which support team they belong to. So as I already said, the tuition is only 29,000 euro, which sounds ridiculously low compared to other executive MBA programs in Western Europe. But again, thanks to our financial endowment, there's a reason for this relatively low competition. We are passing on this financial advantage to our participants through a lower tuition and through scholarships and fellowships. 29,000 euros is for the whole program and includes all the credits. And in order to defray other costs of the program, we have special rates. We've negotiated rates with partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest, ranging from the budget level to luxury level. And we have negotiated discounts with Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group to bring you to Budapest or bring you to Vienna at lower cost. So I would like to invite you to join the Open World. The application deadline is March 27th, and the application starts on our website. I strongly encourage you to apply as soon as possible because we have a first come, first served policy. The sooner you apply, the sooner you're able to reserve your study seat. You're invited to book a one-on-one consultation with me at any time via our website. I will share the link in a couple of minutes in the chat box. If you have specific question or would like to have a personal discussion with me about your application, or if you have questions on the scholarships available. I would like to now move on to the part where you can engage with current participants and alumni, because I think it's one thing to hear about the program from us. I mean, we're passionately committed to the Executive MBA, but I think it's better for you to listen to people who are in the program right now or who have actually done the program already. So I would like to invite Martin Hargett to the conversation now. He's head of strategic business development at Home. Home is the company's name, ironically. And I would like to, well, thank you very much, first of all, Martin, for joining us tonight. And if you could just tell us something about your background, like where you're coming from, what your professional background is, what your academic background is, and why you chose CEU back then.
Hi, Thomas. Hi, Thomas, sure. Yeah, very simple. I did have a business degree already from Germany, this BWL, as the Germans say. And, that's okay to start your career, but it's honestly also something that, thousands of people finish every year. And in CEU, I was really looking to get, a much more international perspective. I also looked at the time at, the great INSEAD and ESN, what other big ones are called. And it was, way out of league. I could never afford that. And I wanted a really international experience. So it's some to the points you said. And I think the experience was crazy international. And in two dimensions. At the first, the teaching method was really different because it was mostly this, American type case studies and group work. And, really from like, I was sometimes reading until midnight, then, preparing my notes, then, debating with others in class. And then, once you're done with this debate, going to yet another group to prepare like a group project you have in another course. And it was really different because the German style, at the time and when I studied was much more, 400 people sitting in a room, listening to a dude on a blackboard, and then, writing the exam half a year later. So, and it sounds funny, but it was really a big switch for me to have this group work, and at the same time, having a, let's say, safe environment to discuss new ideas. It's not like in your work. In your work, in the end, you need to do stuff that your boss wants, and here you could really, play a little bit and try out different roles in this discussions and group works and so on. And the second part of this international experience is really the people, because I was honestly mostly working, with Germans for German clients on German topics, and then suddenly in EU, in CU, my first, we switched teams twice, so I had 3 different teams in different courses. And my first team was like with someone from Central Asia, I think Turkmenistan, someone from China, Bulgaria, and Mexico, and me. That was my first team. And then later I had people from, I think, Canada and Hungary, and I think from Azerbaijan. So again, a really, a really international mix, literally around the globe. And that was super helpful because suddenly I learned much more about this. I wouldn't say cultural sensibilities so much, but just working styles. Different people with very different working styles, which are probably influenced by their, by their culture, or maybe just by the business culture of the companies or the countries they come from. And it was super helpful for me. I really had to calibrate and, learn different approaches with different people. And I think that's, many, many other things were cool about CU, but that's still the sort of strongest memory.
You already mentioned the diversity in class. I mean, that's still a case, of course. We have in the current cohort people flying in from as far as Vancouver in the west and as far as Vladivostok in the east. We have a participant from South Africa and from Australia in the current cohorts, because our cohorts take place simultaneously. And of course, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States, Latin America. I want to add to the diversity. I mean, you mentioned those nationalities, of course, but diversity is more, for us, it's more than just, nationalities, which make good on a brochure, of course, to show diversity. But for us, it's part of the learning experience, because you're exposed to very different learning techniques, to very different approaches, to very different solution-making and decision-making processes. And you have to deal with them if you want to move ahead in your team. I mean, you have to, to work in the group. You mentioned that perfectly. Could you please tell us something about the alumni network? Are you part of the alumni network, or I mean, you are in Berlin. There is I know.
Yes, there are a few. I do have a few friends in Berlin after I moved here, which are finally also Ceu alumni. Although I know them also from, they were not in my course. I saw them. I also know them from just living in Budapest in the market and so on. I'd say, whenever I did reach out to someone, I got an immediate reply. I mean, CU is a strong connection. And when I had, I even checked sometimes on LinkedIn, oh yeah, this person also went to CU. Hey, which class did they go to, and so on. Yeah. So I didn't have to rely on it so far to get a job or something, but I think it's it creates trust. Not necessarily only because, hey, it's the same university and there's some, mechanics to it. That, there are huge universities, and, do you trust everyone who went to the same university than you did? I don't know, probably not. I think for me, it's much more that the people then have despite this diversity, they have something in common. At least I was in CU, when was it? In 2009, yeah, so some time ago. And that's following this mission. I mean, I came to CU partly because of this international experience, but also because I knew, I read Popper, I knew Soros, and I knew that, this thing exists that has sort of the mission of open society, and not just educating the next, 1,000 people who have some business position somewhere. And, whenever I come back to this, I feel that people honestly believe that, you can make the world a better place, and, good business practices and, building healthy and successful businesses is a part of that. It's important, of course, to have lawyers and historians and human rights activists, but it's equally important to build sort of, wealth and opportunity for more people in this world, for the masses, so to say, and not just for sort of an entrenched elite. And I think a lot of the people I met or we connected with here and there on various events, you feel they share the same. They share the same spark that, there's something to the mission.
You mentioned two very good points here. The first one was the alumni network. I totally understand that our alumni are very busy and might not have time to, actively engage in the alumni network. That's perfectly fine. But I think the main advantage of this alumni network is it's there if you need it. It's, it's in the background. If you're not engaged, that's perfectly fine. But if you need it, if you want to, mingle, if you want to make new friends, it's there, and you can easily reach out to this alumni network. And this, I would like to add something to the second part. You talked about the mission. Of course, we are renowned, we're famous for the mission. We're hated for that mission in some countries and in some societies. It's a mission that the approach is to encourage open debate. That's the mission, to have a debate. Any idea can be challenged in our classroom. Even with the professors, you're invited to contradict and to academically fight with our professors. That's perfectly fine.
That's actually super true, indeed. I really remember this class, sorry for interrupting, but I really remember classes where it was not about getting the thing right. The whole setup of this case method, for example, with Yusuf Akbar, was really about debating and learning how to debate and how to build your case, and not so much in the end what is the textbook solution for something.
That's perfectly true, and I think I would like to add something, that our mission is not a partisan mission. I mean, of course, every mission has a political perspective, has a political side to it, of course, but it's a non-partisan mission. We are not engaged in any partisan activities, and everybody is welcome from the whole political spectrum. In our current course, we have people coming from conservative cultures or conservative backgrounds, to liberal, to green, to social democratic, or the leftish spectrum. Everybody's welcome, as long as everybody agrees that every idea can be challenged. And we want to have an active debate in class. We want people to fight in class with words, and to engage with each other and to find the best argument. I think that's the perfect way to summarize it. Martin, is there anything you want to add, or I mean, you've talked about everything so far.
I didn't have talking points. I mean, some of my classmates became good friends. 5 years after, I think we finished in 2010. 5 years later, in 2015, I traveled around North America, Canada, and the US, and I met I think 4 or 5 of my former classmates there, who happened to have moved there and worked there or something. So it's honestly, it's a little bit of a family thing. It's relatively small, and that's great. My class was like 35 people. What size are they now? Probably a bit bigger. And
yeah, at 70.
We made some really good friends, and at the same time the network to reach out if you need to.
I mean, that's true, and the network is available literally anywhere in the world. Wherever you go, you can just reach out through LinkedIn and our Facebook groups and mingle and make friends. Martin, I would like to move on to the next speaker, which is a current participant. Thank you very much, Martin, for joining us tonight. I know you're super busy, and thank you for joining us tonight. I understand you have to go already. You're more than welcome to reconnect with us at any time. Thank you very much, and have a nice
Happy to join. Have a good evening.
Thank you. I would like to introduce now to you Enno Müller-Stephan, who is the Senior Manager of Music and Live Entertainment at the Walt Disney Company, and he will talk about the current participant experience. Enno, please feel free.
So, hi everyone. My name is Enno. As Thomas just mentioned, I'm in the current cohort of 23, so just started my wonderful journey at the CEU. I'm at it. I decided to be part of this program because of my background coming from the creative industry. I've got a media sciences background. I'm working in the creative industry, creating music and live entertainment projects, and I was just missing this piece of executive, of leadership, of economic, and that's why I decided to take part at the program. Another reason for me is that I felt very inspired by the message of the open world. And beside my job, I'm part of the diversity and inclusion program at the the Walt Disney Network, and I'm very engaged there with all different kinds of diversity activities. So I just realized it's a it's a really perfect match for me to join this program. And with this dream and this idea and this, before I started my journey as a CEO, going to my first module in Budapest, entering this beautiful building, and I'm really emotional person, as you will see. Then I like to talk about my emotional journey there, because the other speaker has already talked about all the benefits from the program and the expertise that you met there. I just think it's you just feel that you're at the right place with the right people, because people are representing an open world, coming from all over the world. Speaking about my support group, the Coral Group, we are from Georgia, Hungary, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and Chicago. So that's a really diverse group, of course, all genders, and all these people have really a passion and really actively decided to be part of the program and represent the open world. So at the first moment when I entered the CEU and met the other people, I had the feeling that I'm at the right place with great people. So, and then this made the lectures very positive experience. As was just discussed, the discussions are open, friendly, but also driven very intellectually by the lecturers. So overall, a very, very positive experience. And I really can say that already, being only in the first 10% of the program, I already see that it's a decision that I will never regret.
I think you have the next module starts in 2 days for you.
Actually, yes, I'm on my way tomorrow. So we have a preparation week. We have preparations week. So we already have an idea what is happening, which is also a great part that we can prepare and just work on the content. So you have already an idea what's coming and can work in your support group. Then we have already discussed some cases there, and tomorrow on Friday tomorrow I'm going to arrive in Vienna, and on Saturday I will have my next session with the wonderful and very special and entertaining Joy Chen regarding finance. So yes, I'm just right on the way.
So you'll be in another finance module now in Vienna.
Exactly, that's the second finance module after the first leadership, finance, data, and controlling module. We start now with the second module and working on our projects, which are actually, given that you're working in the support group, really manageable, because everybody can add their strengths and their opinion and their background to this project. So I really think it's a very valuable experience. And I'm dealing with topics far outside my usual background. Talking about solar plants in the cement industry is a new thing for me, but it really works out because we support each other. So it's a very, very good journey. It's still a program, so there's obviously work to do, and I want to address that as well. It's but also very manageable for me being in a 40-hour plus job during the week.
Speaking of time management, you said the module starts on Saturday and is going over the long weekend. I mean, in most European countries, it's a long weekend, which sounds pretty convenient for busy professionals.
Well, exactly. So the weekend obviously is a good timing for me, because I don't lose holidays, and the additional bank holiday on Monday in Germany is also covered. So at least for German-speaking countries, I think. So this is also very convenient for us. I think also a matter of access to the university. But for me, the amount of days from my holidays that I have to deduct for the CEO for the MBA program is actually in a way that I can really live with that. So that's really very quite convenient and manageable.
Perfect. I mean, that's the perfect ending to your part. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, and see you in Vienna.
See you in 2 days. So thank you, Enno, very much. I would like to move on to the next part with you, to our keynote presentation with Professor Mats Köster. Professor Mats Köster is an assistant professor at the Department of Economics and Business. He graduated from Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf with a PhD in economics. And his research focuses on how salience-driven or non-directed attention, in contrast to directed attention that is chosen to balance the costs and benefits of being attentive, influences consumers and markets. And he will share his insights, his academic insights with you now. Mats, you've got the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction and also for having me. So just a very brief disclaimer. So that's a very different kind of talk than I usually give. So you can think of me as, let's say, an applied mathematician who tries to come up with models of how the world works in order to get a better understanding of how we might want to regulate different kinds of markets. But I'm very happy to let's say, have a more applied audience today and try to come across with a few more general messages. So let me just start. So what I want to tell you about today is a very recent project that I'm working on together with my PhD advisor, Paul Heitus, and a colleague at CEU that you will probably meet at some point as well if you decide to join CEU, Boton Küseki. And the project is about steering fallible consumers. So what does this mean? So what we want to think about a little bit is how do firms like Facebook, Google, Bing, whatever intermediaries you might have on the internet, how do these firms influence what consumers end up buying when browsing the internet? Okay, so what we start from is that arguably consumers' attention is limited, and there's an abundance of product that you could potentially buy, but you don't have the time to evaluate all of these products in detail and figure out which ones to buy. Instead, it comes in handy that when you are browsing on the internet, let's say when you're browsing through Facebook, every now and then there pops up this ad that suggests to you, why don't you buy this particular product? So what I'm showing you here is, can you see my cursor? I hope so. What I'm showing you here is a screenshot of my own Facebook feed. And I just joined CEU over the summer, so I'm still in the middle of moving to Vienna, so I'm still looking for furniture for my flat. And by now, Facebook has figured out what I'm really looking for, right? And they've realized that, well, I might want to buy a chair for my home office, so they are recommending me buying all these shares all the time. Okay, so what they do is they use data on my likely purchase behavior in order to direct my attention to specific kinds of products that I'm more likely to purchase. And the question we are asking in this research is, what is the effect of these kinds of recommendations, these kind of steering on the consumer's welfare? Now, we are not the first to think about this. And if you ask, let's say 8 out of 10 economists, the conventional wisdom that they would convey is that as long as we hold prices fixed, as long as we prevent firms from charging different prices to different consumers, this kind of steering, this kind of recommendations have to be good for consumers. And the line of argumentation is as straightforward as the advertising industry puts it. It is that giving consumers the most relevant ads creates a win-win situation. So consumers do not have to search for the products that they want to buy anyhow. And firms are much more likely to make a sale because now consumers finally find their product and they end up buying. And it's not only the advertising industry that very unsurprisingly puts out the positive aspects of personalized advertising, but there are a lot of research papers and also recent policy reports that make or either rely on very similar arguments. So there's a bunch of academic research going back to Hal Varian, who is now working at Google, so one of the most famous economists that think about these kind of questions. And he has written a very general model way back in the 90s that fixed this kind of argumentation into economics. So as long as we hold prices fixed, suggesting the right products to consumers has to benefit them. Okay, but let's think a bit harder about where this argument comes from. So what are the implicit assumptions here? What do we have to assume about consumers? So the first assumption that we have to make is that consumers are infallible in the following sense. They only buy products that are worth buying, and they are able to reject those products that are not. So if I give you a choice, you are able to make a choice that increases your welfare. And the second assumption that is closely tied to the first one is that recommendations have to be based on information about preferences. The idea is that Facebook, Google, and whoever it is really looks for products and recommends products that are valuable to consumers. If we are willing to make these two assumptions, then we might come to the conclusion that, well, these kind of recommendations are actually good for consumers, and that's exactly what we want to have in the market. But as Thomas nicely put it, a lot of academic work and also studying at CU is about challenging existing ideas. So let's try to challenge this idea and think hard about whether this makes sense or not. Okay, so the first question we should ask ourselves is, are consumers indeed infallible? And by now, there's a very large literature in what is called behavioral economics or psychology and economics that documents that consumers often make systematic mistakes in evaluating options. So one very robust fact is that consumers often neglect non-salient price components. And if you think about yourself ordering some stuff on the internet, maybe booking a flight ticket or something like this, then you might realize that often it's really hard to take all the price components into account right from the beginning. So in the case of booking a flight ticket, for instance, at the very end of the purchase process, often they add all these additional taxes and the price gets much more expensive than you expected in the first place. But still, since we have spent so much time on filling in all the information and clicking through all the different screens, you might end up buying the flight at the higher price nonetheless. Okay, so this suggests that consumers might not often make the perfect decisions or the decisions they would have made if all the prices would have been salient to begin with. Similarly, there's quite some evidence suggesting that consumers often draw wrong inferences from provided information. So they might over-infer what it means if a firm tells them, well, you have to buy fast, there are only 4 items left. And often this is not even true. There's a lot of evidence that some firms advertise on the internet in this way, although there's a lot of items left that you could potentially buy, and there's no need to hurry. But consumers might wrongly infer from this that the product is more valuable than it actually is, and then they end up buying for the wrong reasons. Or it might be that consumers project their current mood, the current state of the world into the future, which then biases their perception of how valuable buying a certain product is. So on a sunny day, you might think of vacation, of the beach, and then you might think, well, why don't I buy a new bathing suit today? Although the time when you are going to use this lies far in the future, so your current mood should not be indicative of how valuable the product is too. Okay, so there is some evidence that consumers are infallible, which contrasts with the implicit assumptions that we have to make in order to maintain the conventional wisdom that steering is always beneficial. And then going further, we can ask, what kind of data is actually used in order to make these recommendations? And I brought you one example here that relates to what is called A/B tests that many of these companies run all of the time. And it's an A/B test implemented by the search engine Bing. So what the search engine Bing did is they changed the design of their website in order to hopefully increase the sales that they make via recommending different kinds of products. So what you see here in the left panel is basically our control treatment. This is the original design that Bing had. So here's someone looking for flowers, and this person is recommended to buy from different shops. And what you see is that all the information is provided in fine print below the link to the shop. And then what they tried is to reframe all the information in a similar, in a different way. So this is kind of a treatment where the same information is just put to the heading. Now it's a bit bigger, it's a bit more salient. And according to Bing, this relatively subtle design change increased annual sales by more than 100 million euros. But presumably it's irrelevant for the valuation of a consumer, because it's exactly the same kind of products. It's exactly the same information. It's just reframing the problem in a different way. And one important fact here is that as a result of this A/B testing, Bing also changed the order of recommendations. It also changed the steering that is going on. So this suggests that in reality, steering is not necessarily only about giving you products that you value higher, but also about giving you products that you're just more likely to buy for some other reasons. And I can give you a few more examples of this. So actually we have collected a bunch of nice anecdotes that relate to the kind of steering that might be going on. So there are specialized companies like weather ads that help firms to condition their ads on weather. And this offers the potential to exploit mistaken purchases as a result of projection bias. And this is also something that influences the kind of steering that is going on. Then there's this nice example from the UK where Google steers users that search for high return investment towards fraudulent ads. Okay, someone who searches for high return investment might reveal through the search behavior that probably it's not, he or she is not the most financially sophisticated person. So maybe it's a person that might fall prey to these fraudulent investment opportunities. And Google, we are not claiming that they are actively doing this in order to hurt consumers, but what the algorithm does is it figures out that these consumers may be consumers who end up buying these fraudulent investment products, and it directs their attention to exactly these kinds of products that other consumers would very likely reject. More recently, there is this patent that is filed by Uber for an algorithm that predicts a user's likelihood of being drunk. Okay, so they collect all the information from your phone. They collect how fast you walk. They can estimate the direction in which you are holding your phone. All of this translates into a likelihood of the user being drunk, also making spelling mistakes that are unusual for the user. And then what they are using this for is to improve the safety of their drivers. But you can easily imagine that this might be something that you can use in order to send particular kinds of ads in the moment when a user is likely drunk and might be prone to make emotional decisions and mistaken purchases. Quite relatedly, Spotify is working on an algorithm that can suggest songs based on your likely emotional state. So again, what they do is they record your voice, they filter out the text messages that you send in order to come up with a prediction of what your emotional state is likely to be. And then they recommend songs based on your likely emotional state. So if you are likely to be sad, you will hear or you will be recommended different songs compared to a situation where you are likely happy. And again, this might be also used in order to recommend products. And again, this might be used in order to exploit something like projection bias. When in a given state, you overvalue the usefulness of a given product and you end up buying stuff that you shouldn't be buying. Okay, so taken together, there is some evidence that first of all, consumers are fallible. They not always make the perfect purchasing decisions. And second of all, that firms might be actually using information different from preferences in order to make recommendations to consumers. Now, what my courses and I do in this project is we try to understand what is the effect of steering, what is the effect of personalized recommendations on the welfare of such a fallible consumer. And the long answer is that it depends on several factors. So I guess whenever you ask an economist about a definite answer, then you probably only will hear silence. So again, you will get an "it depends" from me. But we can be a bit more specific than that. We can tell you what exactly are factors that make steering more or less beneficial to consumers. So first of all, it depends on the type of information that is used to steer consumers. So if it is mostly information about preferences, then it tends to be good, even if consumers are fallible. But it turns out that at least this kind of A/B test-based steering that I briefly mentioned before is not exclusively about preferences. It might also capture some kinds of mistakes that consumers are making. And second of all, it depends on the strengths of the technology in identifying attractive products. It depends on how good are Facebook, Google, and co. in figuring out what are the products that the consumer is likely to buy. And by now, these companies are actually quite good in finding products that consumers like. And they will be even much better in the next few years to come. Okay, so the technology in our terms is quite strong. And then last of all, it depends on how reasonable the consumer behaves, how reasonable he or she buys and refrains from buying, absent systematic steering. And we have seen that there are quite a few reasons to believe that consumers often make systematic mistakes in evaluating products. So they might not always be buying in a reasonable way. And if we combine all of these insights, then the empirically relevant short answer to the question is that steering often lowers consumer welfare, in some cases severely so, which stands in stark contrast to the conventional wisdom that a lot of economists have nowadays. Okay, so that's a broad overview of what I'm working on right now. And I'm happy to discuss this further with you, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mats. The first question that I collected for you, Mats. Do your results imply that we should ban personalized ads?
That's a great question. So that's one of the typical questions that we get all of the time. So no, we wouldn't claim that we should necessarily ban personalized advertising. So there are a few beneficial things to having these personalized recommendations. But we might want to interfere in the type of steering that is going on. And one step in this direction is actually what Facebook and Google are working on right now. So what they are doing is they start to build interest profiles for consumers. So they collect different kinds of interests that a given consumer might have based on search behavior, based on cookies, and that collect different kind of information about the consumer. And then it might look like this. So this is again my personal interest profile according to Google. So Google thinks that I'm between 25 and 34 years old. So that's spot on. That's correct. I'm male, also correct. In terms of languages, German, and I think the additional one is English. Perfect match again. And then they have a lot of different things that they associated with me as a consumer and that they base their recommendations on. So in the end, we come up with a narrow range of interests that might inform the kind of products that I observe when I browse through Google. And the important thing here is that consumers can manage these interests. So I can log into my Google account and I can add interests to this list. I can delete interests from this list. So I have a lot of control over the kind of ads that I observe. And this is much more likely to reflect my preferences than the kind of A/B testing that is going on. Okay, so what we would suggest is that we should try to redirect the type of steering towards these kinds of databases that are more likely to reflect the consumer's preferences. And in this case, we would be much more confident in the original claim that steering is to the benefit of the consumer.
Thank you very much. I've noted a question from a Peter. I don't know where he is from, but what are the recent developments in regulating digital markets in general and personalized ads in particular?
Also very good question, and very recent question. So the European Commission is right now working on the Digital Markets Act in order to regulate all the big platforms that are present on the internet and that shape a lot of our life. And the main proposals are not very specific yet, but they, from our perspective, go into the right direction. So first of all, we have a lot of requests for more transparency on the side of Facebook, Google, and co, which would allow us to get a better understanding of how steering actually works in reality. And then in a second step, having these additional information, we would be in a much better position in order to have more specific proposals. And that's the main proposal that's going on right now. One proposal that is not that great from our perspective is providing consumers with simply the option to revoke consent to the use of information. Because a consumer who's not necessarily making welfare maximizing decisions to begin with might not be aware of the fact that it is beneficial to revoke consent. So any kind of regulation that goes in this direction is not necessarily benefiting consumers.
And I would like to move on to the last question because we need to do the Q&A session. A question from Singapore: what are the problems that regulators might face in making use of your results?
So I think one of the major problems with all of these fallible consumers is that we cannot infer what is optimal for the consumer from just observing their behavior. And one of the basic assumptions in classical economics is that we just have to observe behavior and then we know what is best for the consumer. And this doesn't work anymore when we allow for the fact that consumers might be fallible in the sense that they every now and then make mistakes. So a major challenge is to identify what are the products that should be recommended to consumers. And so far, I don't have a really good answer for that. But this is an open question that I'm happy to work on in the next few years.
Thank you very much, Mats. We're moving on to the final part, the Q&A session. I collected your questions from the chat interface, which I'm happy to respond to in the remaining 10 to 15 minutes. The first question deals with the application process and the requirements. That's straightforward. Let's start with the requirements. We are an executive MBA, which means we're looking for people with at least 8 years of work experience, of which 3 years in managerial or leadership roles. A proof of English must be submitted. References must be submitted. We need a curriculum vitae and a motivation letter, of course, and a healthy career progress from any professional background, basically, and an undergraduate degree from any academic background. The next question I noted is, are there any exams and is there a thesis? Of course, your participation in the executive MBA needs to be assessed somehow. But we are not doing this by inviting you to travel to a module and have you sit in a classroom for 6 hours and take a test after you've traveled so far. You will be sitting in the module, interacting with your fellows, interacting with your teachers, And once the module is done, you will go back to your home country, your country of residence, and you have a time frame of about 10 days to 2 weeks to do an online exam, which most of them are open book exams. You can do those exams at any point. You can do them at night, you can do them while you're in the office, you can do them on the weekends. Once you start the exam, of course, you need to finish them. So take enough time for them to finish, but it's totally up to you when you're doing those exams. One addition, we only have classical exams in the quantitative courses. Most other modules, which are not quantitative, which are qualitative, will be assessed based on class participation, attendance, a 360-degree peer review. That means you will not only be assessed by your teacher, which is the obvious thing to do and the easiest thing to do. No, you will be assessed by your fellows as well, because your class participation and contribution should be substantial. It should be valuable. It should be, important. And your fellows will assess you with regard to content, quality, and your style of interaction. If you're a dominant person or if you're interrupting others, all these kinds may play a role in the assessment by your fellows in class. The second part of the question was the thesis part. We will not waste your time, your executives. We will not waste your time after you've done the 10 modules with putting you in a library in some place and having you doing research and reading books and never finish your thesis. No, you will be working in a capstone project that is an ongoing project over the whole course of your study over 2 years. And the capstone project is dealing with an actual problem from your current job situation, a professional situation that you need to discuss with the responsible professor. So it's something that puts theory into practice and helps you analyze and understand and solve an actual problem from your work field. The next question deals with the importance of leadership in the program. What is the importance of leadership in the program? The executive MBA very much focuses on taking you from the functional level of operational expertise to the strategic level. And this requires leadership skills, not just more skills from your specific field, but leadership skills, soft skills and hard skills. And 3 of 10 of our modules deal with leadership solely. So you will be focusing on leadership in a very intense way, because we want to create better leaders with the program. And the last, but definitely not least point and question for this evening is the part on financing. As I said, the tuition is 29,000 euro. We offer a payment plan of 3 installments over 3 years, which can be discussed to an individual payment plan, of course. But in addition to that, we offer a variety of scholarships and fellowships. We offer the Open World Scholarship, which is the first stream of our scholarships, which aims at people who are actually already or have already disrupted or have worked or contributed to enabling and strengthening open societies in their private life or in civil rights or in the professional world. Most people with the Open World Scholarship come from the NGO part, because it very much is aligned to our mission, and this is being achieved mostly in NGOs and government or non-government organizations. But we offer the second stream, which is a need-based scholarship. It aims at people. We only take into consideration your individual income situation and the country of residence you're living in, because the same situation might be differently remunerated. If you're having a marketing position in Hungary, you will have a different salary than the same marketing position in Germany, for example. We will take this into consideration for the non-competitive need-based scholarship. And the third stream of fellowships, of financial support, is our fellowship option. We offer a variety of fellowships in order to encourage people who have not been able to pursue higher education traditionally, like marginalized groups or groups who have been discriminated against. For example, we have a fellowship for Romani managers in Central Europe. We have an international LGBTIQ fellowship. We have a social mobility fellowship in Germany, but we also have an international businesswomen fellowship, because for us, gender equality is not, again, it's not something, it's not an empty catchphrase for us. We are actively promoting, empowering women to join us, to apply for the program in order to achieve the gender ratio, because it's not just an empty catchphrase for us. We want to achieve it, and we take money and invest in people to achieve it. In view of the time, it's 7:10. I would like to conclude this session and thank you very much for joining us tonight from around the world. I would like to thank Martin and Enno for joining us tonight. I would like to thank Mats for his wonderful keynote presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to book a one-on-one consultation with me. Thank you very much from Munich. Good evening.